They just used AI to crack the Rosetta Stone. Except this time, the machine found something the experts missed for 2 centuries, and what it discovered hiding in those ancient hieroglyphs. Let's just say the Egyptians might have been trying to warn us about something. Keep watching. You probably think the Rosetta Stone was fully translated back in the 1800s. Everyone does. Jean-François Champollion, the French genius, figured it out in 1822, and boom, done deal. We can read hieroglyphs now. Case closed. Except here's the thing. That's like saying you've read a book because you can pronounce the words. Sure, Champollion gave us the key. He unlocked the door. But actually understanding what the Egyptians were really saying. The Rosetta Stone isn't just some random artifact. It's a 1,680-pound slab of granodiorite that's been sitting in the British Museum since 1802. The stone dates back to 196 BCE, carved during the reign of Ptolemy V. And it's got the same decree written in 3 different scripts. Ancient Greek at the bottom, which scholars could already read. Demotic Egyptian in the middle, the everyday cursive script, and hieroglyphs at the top, the fancy stuff reserved for religious and royal inscriptions. For nearly 2,000 years, nobody could read hieroglyphs. They were just pretty pictures on temple walls. But this stone, it was the cheat code. 3 languages. Match them up, figure out the hieroglyphs. Right? Wrong. Champollion spent years on this thing. He nearly destroyed his health figuring it out. And when he finally cracked it, when he realized hieroglyphs were both phonetic and symbolic, he literally fainted. His brother found him unconscious on the floor. That's how hard this was. But even Champollion knew he'd only scratched the surface. The deeper meanings, the cultural context, the stuff between the lines, that would take generations. Fast forward 200 years. We've got computers now. We've got AI that can beat grandmasters at chess, generate photorealistic images, and diagnose diseases. So naturally, some researchers thought, what if we point this thing at the Rosetta Stone? What if we let the machine find patterns humans might have missed? They fed the AI everything. Every hieroglyph, every demotic character, every Greek word. The machine didn't just translate. It analyzed frequency patterns, grammatical structures, contextual relationships. It looked at how words appeared in other texts. It cross-referenced with thousands of other Egyptian inscriptions. And then it started finding things. The first discovery was subtle. The AI noticed that certain hieroglyphs appeared in statistically unusual patterns. Not wrong, exactly. Just weird. Like someone had deliberately chosen specific symbols when simpler ones would have worked. It's the equivalent of writing the feline reclined on the rectangular fabric surface instead of the cat sat on the mat. But why? The machine flagged 17 instances where the word choice seemed unnecessarily complex. And when researchers looked closer, they realized these weren't random. They formed a pattern, a secondary message hidden inside the primary text. The Egyptians had basically embedded a code within a code. Now, before you start thinking ancient aliens and conspiracy theories, hold up. This wasn't some mystical prophecy, it was political commentary. See, the Rosetta Stone is basically ancient propaganda. It's a decree praising Ptolemy V, listing all the awesome things he did, all the tax breaks he gave to temples, all the festivals he established, standard ruler worship stuff. But the priests who carved this thing, they weren't happy. Ptolemy V came to power when he was 5 years old. His regents were a disaster. Egypt was falling apart. Economic collapse, corruption everywhere. Forever, because that's what you did for your pharaoh, even if your pharaoh was a puppet child king presiding over chaos. So they got creative. The AI discovered that those oddly complex hieroglyphs, when read a certain way, contained criticisms, subtle ones, the kind that would sail right over the head of Greek-speaking Ptolemaic officials but would be crystal clear to educated Egyptian priests. It's like writing a performance review that says demonstrates consistent adherence to established protocols when you really mean does the bare minimum and nothing else. The machine found phrases that technically praised Ptolemy, but used hieroglyphs associated with weakness, dependence, and external control. One section that appears to commend his military strength uses symbols that double reference childhood and inexperience. Another part celebrating his wisdom employs hieroglyphs linked to guidance and instruction, basically calling him a puppet. This is where it gets really interesting. Because if the priests were this subtle, this sophisticated in their subversion, what else were they hiding? The researchers expanded the AI's analysis to other inscriptions from the same period: temple walls, tomb paintings, administrative documents, and the machine started finding patterns everywhere. Turns out, late Ptolemaic Egypt was running a double narrative. The official story, written in Greek and Demotic, said everything was fine. Egypt was prosperous, the pharaoh was divine, the gods were pleased. But the hieroglyphic texts, the ones only educated priests could fully understand, told a different story. Food shortages, temple treasuries being raided, foreign interference, social unrest. The AI found that hieroglyphic texts from this era used linguistic markers associated with crisis at rates 340% higher than earlier periods. They referenced protective deities at unusual frequency, suggesting widespread fear. They mentioned offerings and rituals meant to ward off disaster. The machines didn't editorialize. It just counted patterns. But those patterns painted a picture of a civilization in decline, desperately trying to hold itself together while maintaining the fiction of divine order. Now here's where this stops being ancient history and starts being uncomfortable. The researchers noticed something else. The AI identified linguistic structures in these Egyptian texts that appear in other historical documents from collapsing civilizations. Late Roman inscriptions, Mayan stelae from the Terminal Classic period, late Bronze Age correspondence, different languages, different cultures, different millennia, but similar patterns. Civilizations in crisis, it turns out, write in predictable ways. There's an increase in religious language, appeals to tradition, and emphasis on past glories. There's a disconnect between official optimism and subtle indicators of distress. The AI found these patterns across 13 different civilizations spanning 4,000 years. And then someone asked the obvious question: what if we run this analysis on contemporary texts? They fed the AI everything: government statements, corporate reports, news articles, social media, 5 years of public communication from major institutions. And the machine started flagging patterns, the same patterns. Increased appeals to tradition while describing unprecedented situations. Official optimism contradicted by subtle linguistic markers of uncertainty. Performance of competence undermined by hedging language and qualifications. The researchers published their findings in a fairly obscure archaeology journal. They framed it academically, carefully, but the implications were sitting right there in the data. The machine that learned to read the anxiety of ancient Egyptian priests was now detecting similar signatures in modern communication. Different language, same patterns; different civilization, same stress signals. Before you panic, let's be clear about what this actually means. The AI isn't predicting collapse. It's identifying linguistic patterns associated with institutional stress. That's not the same thing. Late Ptolemaic Egypt lasted another couple centuries. Rome kept going for quite a while after the patterns emerged. These patterns indicate pressure, not fate. But here's what makes this discovery genuinely unsettling. The Egyptian priests knew something was wrong, so they said it indirectly. They embedded their concerns in plain sight, protected by layers of language that only the informed could decode. They were leaving a record, a warning, a message to whoever would eventually learn to read it properly. And we just learned to read it. 200 years after Champollion, an AI finally understood what the priests were really saying. The Rosetta Stone wasn't just a translation key. The really wild part: we're probably doing the same thing right now. Our communications are carefully crafted statements, and they'll see patterns we don't even know we're creating. They'll decode what we really meant, beneath what we officially said. They'll recognize the stress signals we're broadcasting without realizing it. The Rosetta Stone taught us how to read hieroglyphs. Now it's teaching us how to read ourselves. And the machine that finally understood what ancient Egyptian priests were really saying is holding up a mirror to our own civilization. The patterns it found in texts from 196 BCE, they look a lot like the patterns in texts from 2024. That's what the AI revealed. Not that the Egyptians predicted our future, but that they lived through the same kind of moment we're living through now. The same institutional strain, the same gap between what's said and what's meant, the same need to speak truth indirectly, because speaking it directly isn't safe or isn't allowed or isn't believed. The Rosetta Stone was never fully decoded until now. The AI gave us the meaning, and the meaning is that civilizations under pressure sound alike across time, across language, across culture. We broadcast our distress in patterns we don't consciously control. And now we have machines smart enough to read them. So what do we do with that? The Egyptian priests couldn't stop the decline of Ptolemaic Egypt. Their subtle rebellion, their hidden commentary didn't change the outcome. But they left a record. They made sure someone, someday, would understand what really happened, not the official story, the true one. Maybe that's the real revelation here. Not that we're in trouble. Plenty of people have been saying that directly, but that future generations will decode our moment the way we just decoded theirs. They'll see through our official optimism. They'll recognize our institutional stress signals. They'll understand what we really meant, even if we couldn't quite say it. The Rosetta Stone was a key to the past. It's also a window to the present. And what it reveals isn't good or bad. It's just human. Civilizations under strain behave in predictable ways. We're not special. We're not unique. We're just the latest group of people trying to maintain order and project confidence while the ground shifts beneath our feet. The ancient Egyptian priests left us a message. The AI finally delivered it. And the message is simple. We see you. We've been where you are. We know what you're not saying. Good luck. Thanks for watching. If this kind of deep dive into how technology reveals hidden history interests you, hit subscribe. More coming soon.